Hello, it is Jack Gill, and welcome back to Redmen Academy. There is so much football going on at the minute. But James, lockdown rules getting eased as well. Have you been up to much recently?
I'm in Wales, aren't I? So nothing's really changed at all for us, to be honest. We're still stuck in a 5-mile radius from our houses. Not much going on at all, really. What's it like over by you?
I mean, for me, it's more because I've been over cautious, so I'm going on more walks now. I've been to play golf a couple of times, stuff like that. So, it's not too bad. But with the news today of pubs opening and stuff like that, it's starting to look even more normal now. And with the football being on as well, it's a lot better and easier to stay at home now. There's something consistently. We'll crack on with it. We'll crack on with football talk, and we're going to have a few more videos over the next few days. We got to watch every team in the Premier League again since the lockdown. There's been teams that have impressed, teams that haven't impressed. We'll kick it off with a youngster that's impressed, James, and he scored a goal against Arsenal, and he started for Man City last night. Man of the match performance from Phil Foden, and he's a name that we've mentioned when talking about football recommencing and this new substitution rule, and a player that may benefit from this. And he's looked fantastic since the break, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's brilliant. That goal against Arsenal, 2 against Burnley, he's shown what he's capable of and what we've known for a while of what he's able to do. And we always said it was a matter of just getting him minutes, giving him consistent run in the team. And now he seems to be taking that opportunity with both hands.
Yeah, definitely. He's a superb youngster, and a lot of people call him the Stockport Iniesta. You can tell he's going to become a very good player in the future. And when you get the praise that he has from people like Pep Guardiola, there's a talent there. But the one thing that always poses a question is his game time. And actually, if he's as good as Pep Guardiola says he is, why doesn't he play him more? It's as simple as that. But with David Silva leaving, it opens a door for more game time for Phil Foden, and I feel like this has fallen perfect for him. That he can get more football now with these 5 substitutions and stuff like this. And he's, as you say, he's taking the opportunity with both hands. And I thought last night he was absolutely incredible. It was the best I've seen Phil Foden play.
Yeah, definitely. Apart from those few Champions League games he's done where he's done well in, last night was sort of his big announcement, wasn't it? Played, I've got here 79 minutes, man of the match, 2 goals, almost an impeccable sort of stats at the end. It was just, this is what we're going to hope to see from him over the next few years. And unfortunately for us, it doesn't look like he's going to be slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a shame, really, that he's at Manchester City, and there's probably no threat for Man City of losing him as well, because it's his boyhood club, it's the club he supports. So, I can see him having a very good and long career at Manchester City, just 20 years old, of course. We've got to do some Merseyside derby chat, James. It was a pretty poor game. We're one step closer to the title. What were your thoughts on it? 'Cause for me personally, I felt like it was a game that we were desperate not to lose, and actually a point is a step in the right direction, and losing that game off the back of this break, and it obviously being the Merseyside derby, could have been catastrophic is the wrong word, but it wouldn't have started us off very well. So I think a point and a draw was the safe way of getting that extra step in the right direction.
Yeah, it was just getting off on the right track, wasn't it? The last thing you want after, a 3-month break is to lose in, one of your biggest games of the season. So it's just getting through this so then we can focus on, the next few weeks, which are going to be tricky to navigate. And it's just, every single point we get is a point closer to that league title. Only 5 left now. Everton out the way. That's one of the tougher games, probably on paper, done.
And from an Everton perspective, I think you can tell the Carlo Ancelotti effect since lockdown. It's the first time I thought personally they really looked like a Carlo Ancelotti team. I'm not sure about you.
Yeah, definitely. They've clearly been working at that over, the last few weeks, especially when they've been in full contact training, where every time we attacked, they knew exactly where they should be expecting the runners to be coming through, and then how to, when they regain possession, how to hit us on the break. And, they looked like a well-drilled Ancelotti side, and I think it's finally coming together for him. And this was the little sort of pre-season that he needed to get things in shape.
And Anthony Gordon started for Everton. Obviously, James, he's a man that we've spoke about on this show a few times before because he does excellently for Everton at youth level. Carlo Ancelotti's come in, and it's very clear that he's a player that's in Ancelotti's plans. I think he came off the bench against Chelsea in the drilling before the break in football due to the coronavirus, and he started against us, of course. I think the lad played well. It's clear to see that there's a player there. We've seen that at youth level, but he didn't look out of his depth in the first team in the Merseyside derby, did he?
Exactly, yeah. And he was playing a role that was probably a little bit unfamiliar to, where he's playing a little bit deeper than we typically see, where he is more of an attacking midfielder. Yet he played like any other player on that pitch. He gave us all, and I think it's time for him to start getting minutes now, because obviously he's attracted interest from Borussia Dortmund in the past, and obviously having teams like that sniffing around some of your top youngsters, it's going to force your hand a little bit. And fortunately for him, it seems to have paid off a little bit.
Yeah, we're not going to do too much on the Merseyside derby because there's loads of stuff on the Redmen website and the Redmen YouTube, of course, so head over and watch all that. And because it was a pretty dull game, and
there's not too much to talk about.
There's not too many talking points from that. I suppose other talking points, though, James, from other games during this week is that relegation battle, because we've spoke about Liverpool and the title that's very close. There's also a very close hunt for the European spots as you go further down, looking at the race for fourth and fifth and sixth and getting those European spots. But it's also very close at the bottom, and since the resumption in football, I think it's clear to see the teams that look down and out. And I'm referring to Norwich and Bournemouth here because for me, I think they've looked poor. Yes, it's only one game that I'm referring to now. But before the break, obviously, as well, we know they were in poor form. They put themselves, they were left in a dodgy position in the bottom of the table. And now, since the break, they've come out, and their first performance wasn't the performance you want from them. It wasn't a performance where they're really hitting the ground running straight away and they're fighting for their survival. What was it?
Yeah, it's just you can see which teams have been working on, tightening things up a little bit and making one last push to stay in the Prem, and which teams seemingly just have carried on where they left off. Really, Aston Villa look like a different team completely. They're playing much more positively, and people that have backed them to survive are looking, quite good right now, because the way Bournemouth and Norwich are playing, they look like they've already accepted that things are the way they are. And honestly, I can't see them, or maybe even West Ham, staying up.
That's the thing, because I think I thought Brighton might pose a shock against Arsenal. I did think that, and that's because Brighton all season have been a team that have played with flair and they've been enjoyable to watch. And they didn't look like the sort of team that would just give up. They'd been unlucky with results, and that was about it. They struggled to score. They don't really score too much, Brighton. So whereas Bournemouth and Norwich, they haven't looked themselves, especially Bournemouth, they haven't looked the Bournemouth team that we've seen over the last few years. And I was wondering when they've got a few more of their players back fit, that once we resumed, would they come back with a bit more fight? But they haven't, and it's one of them things with West Ham and Aston Villa. They have quality, and it's easy for them to turn it on. Bournemouth and Norwich, not so much.
For Bournemouth, they've got a tough running as well. They've obviously got Wolves, tomorrow on Wednesday night. Then they've got United, Tottenham, Leicester, City, and Everton all to play in their last 8 games. That's going to be ridiculously difficult for them. And you've got to wonder really how they, going to come out with those 5-6 games with more than a handful of points.
Definitely. Eddie Howe is often praised and called a class manager and linked to bigger and better jobs. And this is going to be his hardest task in management. He's got Bournemouth right from the bottom to the Premier League, but this is probably the hardest thing he's ever faced as a manager. And I think it will really show his abilities if he can pull them out of this one. They've obviously got players leaving at the expiry of their contracts as well. So, it's going to be tough for Bournemouth. And after their first game against Palace, I think, and to be fair, Palace played very well, but they made Palace look better than they are.
Exactly, yeah. They didn't really give themselves a good account, and they've just, they played all right against us before the break. They, 2-1 we won, but they were a pretty decent side on the day, and they got even worse, and it's not looking good unless that was just a blip. But that really wasn't the best time to have a blip. They should have been winning that game, and then going into these tricky few weeks, hoping to get a couple of draws in there. But now they've made it so much harder for themselves.
And to go from talking about the relegation battle to a team that's playing like they should be in a relegation battle, we'll talk about Arsenal now, James. They've obviously, their first game of the season, they played against Man City. Sorry, the first game since the break. They played against Manchester City. A tough game for them. I thought they played all right until David Luiz came on and they sort of fell apart. But they were woeful against Brighton. And we spoke the other week about the issues at Arsenal and how they need a massive clear out and all sorts like that. But I felt like a lot of the defeat and a lot of the blame from that defeat was shifted on David Luiz. And it was clear to see against Brighton that he's not the only problem, and they have an abundance of issues that need sorting as soon as possible, really.
I mean, they've got no bottle, have they really? They absolutely let it slip in the last sort of 20 minutes. And, you're looking at the stats, they have the same amount of shots as Brighton, same amount of shots on target, they had more possession. And yet they did absolutely nothing with it. And, ultimately conceded in the 96th minute. You can't be affording to lose when you've got stats like that, when you're dominating possession, when you're, putting out an equal sort of creative output as the team. You can't be conceding so late, especially when you've got the quality players that you have got. All the players we think were quality.
It's hard not to talk about that game without talking about the drama involved. What did you make of the Maupay and Leno situation?
I mean, I missed the challenge when it first happened, and after looking back, I think it was all just massively blown out of proportion. But then what followed hasn't helped things, and it's just made it look like it was more of a beef than it was. But you don't want to be seeing that on a football pitch, do you, really? It just doesn't sit right with a lot of people, especially when, you want people who want to be getting back to football, enjoying it, and these things just sort of put a bit of a cloud over it.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of them situations where it happened several times during the game, doesn't it? In every game of football, and strikers aren't in the wrong there for leaving one in. It's not helped by the way that Leno lands, and I do feel as though it could have been a yellow card for Maupay, but I think Leno's reaction in from the stretcher is clearly an unhappy one. He's clearly not very happy with Maupay, and at that time, for Arsenal players to let Maupay then go and score the winner, I think shows exactly what you're saying
poetic, wasn't it? Absolutely poetic.
Definitely, and it's one of them things. I think Maupay's interview afterwards was very eye-opening as well, because it brings attention to what Arsenal players are like, and we speak about Mesut Ozil and David Luiz and how actually they're players on big money contracts who are prepared to just be woeful and have an arrogance about them. But you're talking about a young midfielder here in Matteo Guendouzi, who's bragging about his wage to a Brighton striker, and it's one of them situations where they are in no position to be bragging about anything. Then they're not that badge on their shirt proud. And I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans praising Guendouzi, laughing at what he said. But if that was someone at my club, I would be absolutely fuming if one of my players did that, because it's not right when they're putting in performances like that and bragging about their wage on the pitch, or bragging about anything, having little arguments on the pitch. It's just very amateur, and it's very poor. And he should be showing that he deserves that wage by playing very good football on the pitch rather than losing to teams like Brighton.
Exactly, you can't be losing 2-1 to Brighton and then bragging that you're on 40 grand a week. He's really not in a position to be bragging about anything, because based on current form, Brighton are the better team. That's all it comes down to. And I didn't like the way Guendouzi was conducting himself, on the pitch too, going players' throats and getting people's faces. He shouldn't be doing that. At his age, he should be looking to impress, show what he can do, not lashing out at the opposition because he's frustrated the way things are.
Well,
just doesn't sit right with me at all.
That's another point as well. I don't understand how he's escaped action for that. He's grabbed the player around
effectively as well. Something should have happened since, surely.
It's ridiculous, and I'm sure there was many kids watching and other people who probably looked at it as well and went, "Man, you know, they're not meant to go near each other when they're off the pitch. They're not allowed to shake hands. So grabbing someone by the throat should be even worse during all this coronavirus stuff. Let alone whether it's acceptable in the first place or not, which it absolutely isn't, by the way. But I have no idea how he's escaped any punishment there whatsoever. And, you know, as I said, for me, I would be absolutely crucifying him if he played for Liverpool. And I don't understand how Arsenal fans, or even just if it's a minority of Arsenal fans that are okay with his actions during that game, I would be absolutely fuming.
It's embarrassing. You know, performance aside, even if they'd have won, it's still embarrassing. I'd have been embarrassed if that Liverpool player, especially a youngster, had have conducted themselves like that. I'm not show my face online.
Youngster are experienced. It doesn't matter, you know. He's not living up to it, and when there's all that surrounding the club at the minute, and David Luiz and Mesut Ozil, it's not just a problem with them, and it's easy to see why Arsenal have the problems they have. They have a young squad, and you'd think they're in a good position where they can go, oh, well, we can rebuild, but they have too many players in their squad that have that mentality, and they're like, oh, well, look at the money we're on, and you don't know whether it comes from players like Aubameyang and Ozil are the players that they look up to and stuff like that, and look at the money they're demanding at Arsenal, or whether it's a mentality thing of all the players, but it's one of them things where they definitely look like they need to clear out, because how they've been performing is awful. And, you know, Arsenal fans should be at a point now where they can't blame managers anymore, because it's Wenger, Emery and Arteta all in a short space of time. It's the players, and they need to. Everyone needs to see that it's the players who are up there, and they do look an absolute mess. They have Southampton next, and I fancy Southampton beating them, because
wouldn't surprise me, honestly.
The way Southampton played against Norwich, yes, I know Norwich were very poor, but Danny Ings was on fire. You know, they had some very good players during that game, and they looked very, very good in the second half. I fancy them against Arsenal, I really do, and Arsenal need to bounce back with a good performance during that game. But anyway, to move on to the European spots, once again, it's players resumed, and it's interesting, isn't it? We saw Sheffield United, with a bit of controversy, ended up taking only a point against Aston Villa. Then United and Tottenham drew, of course. Wolves beat West Ham, as you'd expect them to. And then Sheffield United had an opportunity to, you know, catch up with Man United and close the gap and really push for that fourth spot. But they got hammered by Newcastle.
Terrible.
It's something that interests me, James. A lot of people said that actually this break may be damaging for Sheffield United. They're in an excellent run of form, and losing their rhythm might harm them. I know they had John Fleck sent off against Newcastle. They were down to 10, and obviously the importance of John Fleck, as it is for Sheffield United, he's a huge importance to them. Do you think this is just a blip and a dodgy result, or do you think this is the start of a bit of a spiral for Sheffield United, where we'll see them losing quite a few games?
I mean, I think it's their situation similar in a way to the Leicester, you know, title challenge, where they had the momentum behind them, and it was just every week at a time they were defying the odds. And the moment you pull the rug from underneath them for 3 months, you know, they might sort of start to question things. They might think, okay, well, how can we change things so that we pick up even more points? But what made them so good was that they had their own unique way of doing things, and they made it work for them. So you've got to wonder, really, right now, have they overcomplicated it? Have they lost that little bit of momentum, that little bit of spirit that was pushing them on? Or is it just, as you said, you know, a little blip where, you know, it was bound to happen. They were bound to lose, you know, one game in these last so many matches, last 9 matches. But it's getting tough, and it's getting hot in that, you know, race for 5th place, and it's not going to get any easier.
Yeah, they've got some crucial games as well. I think they've still got Man United, Wolves and Tottenham still to play. And it's going to be very interesting to see that result against United tomorrow night. It's a massive game for Sheffield United. I know they've had some fitness concerns as well, and that might go into it too. And being down to 10 men is never a good thing. But it's one of them where you do fear for them and that push for Europe. Though, actually, I do think that Europe might be damaging for a club like Sheffield United at this point in time anyway. So it may
be soon, sort of thing.
Exactly. So missing out on Europe may not necessarily be a bad thing, but I do fear that this is the start of a bit of a bad run of form for them. What did you make of the other clubs in that? What did you think of the United Tottenham game?
I mean, it was it was okay. I don't really know what I was expecting too much, but it's United, isn't it? It's a Mourinho team playing against Man United. It was a little bit underwhelming. I was hoping for a few more goals. Really didn't really want to see United saved by a penalty in the last 10 minutes, but it was a decent display.
For me, it was like the Merseyside derby, but the difference was that both these teams need points. Mm-hmm. I know that people say, "Well, we still need points. We needed 6 points, but we had 9 games to do it, so there's not a necessity." Whereas Tottenham and United still very much have things to fight for, and that was a game where they both needed to pick up points, and they both come away with a point. It was one of them that I think, as you said, underwhelmed massively. But United perhaps lucky to get a point at the end. What did you make of the penalty decision?
I mean, it could have gone either way, really, couldn't it? I don't think there would. I think there would be people complaining regardless of which way it would have gone. And I think United were fortunate that it was given in their favour, because a draw suited them a lot more than it suited Spurs. They can happily stay in that position. I know Wolves had the opportunity to overtake them, but United are fine in 5th place, whereas Spurs really needed a win that day, and they were quite unlucky.
Yeah, I think Pogba changed the game for me, and I think he was very clever on that penalty. He forces it from Eric Dyer, who makes a rash decision. And yes, Pogba goes down very easily, but that's a sign of a good player who notices when he's drawn a foul and can go down and win a penalty like that. And I do think Pogba's not been what we saw of Pogba from Juventus at United, which is brilliant for you and I to see, as he's at United, of course. But he looked. It was one of his best performances in a United shirt, I thought, the other day, and it was only brief, but he made a massive impact from the bench, and I'm sure Jose Mourinho didn't like witnessing that after everything that happened between them two at United. And then there's Wolves, of course, and Wolves, who I fancy to push for a top 4 spot, or even finish 5th if they don't make the top 4. And they looked very good against Wolves, against West Ham, in that second half. Though, as I say, West Ham again were a team that didn't look good, that didn't look very good. But Wolves dispatched of them very easily.
Yeah, Wolves did what they're good at. We know exactly the way Wolves like to play, and I think West Ham made it quite easy for them to just play comfortably, look to attack with pace, and then we saw the results of that, and it just all but confounds how poorly West Ham have been this season and what we can probably expect over the next sort of 6 weeks.
And then we've obviously got even more fixtures now. It's a new game week. We've got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday football. It's just brilliant, James, isn't it?
It doesn't stop, does it? At all. I'm just scrolling through the fixtures here, and it doesn't ease up, which is absolutely fine by me. I have no complaints at all.
It's absolutely brilliant. You mentioned there that you got the fixtures of which ones are catching your eye this weekend. Do you think there'll be any shocks, or do you think anyone will stand out?
I mean, the Newcastle and Aston Villa game, which is on Wednesday night, will be quite an interesting one, I think, because obviously we know that Newcastle will have a little bit of momentum behind them now going into this game. A few players coming into form, whereas then we've got Villa, who have looked decent since coming back and have got a lot to play for. So I think it could either be an absolute thriller or a 0-0, teams cancelling each other out. I think that could be one to keep an eye on. And on Thursday as well, as you mentioned, we've got Southampton and Arsenal, but we've also got Chelsea and City, which will be big. Especially more so for Chelsea than City, who haven't really got anything to play for. That could be a definitely good one to watch. 8:15 Thursday night.
Yeah, it's a big game for City. We'll see that for Chelsea. Sorry, we'll see that City have had 3 games in 8 days, and they've lost Sergio Aguero to injury, of course. And Chelsea need the points if they want 4th. This is a game where they could really do with picking up a couple of points. I think there'll be a lot of eyes on Liverpool, Crystal Palace as well, because Crystal Palace looked very, very good against Bournemouth, and defensively in the last few games before lockdown, I'm talking, as well as the one against Bournemouth. They've been outstanding, and Scott Dan and Gary Cahill seem to have formed a very good centre-back partnership. and obviously we need 5 points, and this would be a big win, and would mean that we could win the league against Manchester City.
Correct me if I'm wrong. If we beat Palace on Wednesday night and then Chelsea were to beat City, would that make it possible? Would that win the title?
I am sure. I think we'd need a point against City, but I'm not. It might do. I'm not sure.
We'll have to check this out on Twitter.
It's something that we definitely need to look at though, because it's a genuine possibility, James. Yeah. And then obviously, as you mentioned, we've got Arsenal Southampton, which I think will be another good game. That Newcastle Aston Villa, I kind of fancy Aston Villa there, as you say. That I thought they dominated against Sheffield United. That there was, as I say, they were lucky to get a point with that bit of controversy.
Yeah.
They played decent against Chelsea. Perhaps didn't deserve to lose there. I think Chelsea were on balance the better team there, but they went ahead, of course. So there's a few good games. We've mentioned Sheffield United, Man United as well. So lots to look forward to in the next few days. We'll be back tomorrow with another video. We're going to do one looking at Brewster and how good he did this weekend. There's a young lad at Derby called Louis Sibley. Remember that name? Jude Bellingham being linked to Dortmund. All kinds of rumours like that. If you want our score predictions for these games, head over to Twitter. We've been doing a thread. It's very close, James, between me and you so far. What are the current scores on the doors?
I believe I'm winning 6-4. I did get lucky, so it's definitely still up.
I've got some catching up to do then, haven't I, in the next few days. But that's all for today's video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, of course. Let's get us to 2K before the end of the season. It's a big ask, but let's give it a go. Cheers for joining us, and we'll see you in a bit. It's all right.